The crystalline prison hung suspended in the excavation chamber, pulsing with an iridescent blue light that hadn't dimmed in millennia. Inside, a woman floated in timeless suspension, her dark hair flowing around her face as though underwater. Nador Vex adjusted his spectral lenses, his four-fingered hands trembling slightly at the discovery. "Impossible," he whispered, the word escaping his gray-tinged lips. "A human, perfectly preserved." The dig site on Proxima V had yielded many artifacts from civilizations long extinct, but nothing like this. According to his scans, the crystalline structure had been discovered and studied by at least 7 different species across 2 centuries. Each had tried to free the human within. Each had failed. Nador's superior, Director Gemma of the Meridian Archaeological Institute, floated toward the artifact, her gravitational stabilizers humming. "The readings indicate consciousness," she said, her voice clinically detached. After all this time, as if responding to Gemma's words, the woman's eyes opened, deep amber irises focusing directly on Nador. He stumbled backward, knocking over a hovering tray of instruments. "She's aware," he gasped. Through the translucent prison walls, the woman's lips moved. No sound emerged, but Nador found himself able to understand. "My name is Celine. Please help me." Within days, the discovery became the center of the Meridian Empire's scientific community. Tests revealed the prison was composed of an unknown material that resisted every attempt at analysis. It couldn't be cut, melted, or phased through. Yet somehow, it allowed for telepathic communication with the woman inside. Nador spent hours by the prison, cataloging Selena's memories. She remembered little before her imprisonment, only that she had been a scientist from Earth in its final days, studying an anomalous energy source. "How long have I been here?" she asked one night as Nador was preparing to leave. He hesitated. "Based on carbon dating of materials found nearby, approximately 3,000 years. Tears formed in her eyes, but couldn't fall in the suspension field. Nador felt an unfamiliar ache in his chest. Meridians prided themselves on emotional control, but something about her sorrow breached his carefully constructed walls. "I'll free you," he promised impulsively. The records show the Arcturian hegemony tried sonic resonance. The Zeridian monks used psionic keys, and the Quantum Dynasty attempted phase shifting. But there must be something they missed. Selena's expression softened. "Why would you help me when empires with far greater technology have failed?" "Because they were looking for complexity," Nador replied, a theory forming. "What if the solution is simple?" That night, as the research facility powered down to minimal operations, Nador returned to the chamber. He placed his palm against the cool surface of the prison. "I don't understand why," he admitted, "but I feel connected to you. Like I've been searching for you my entire life." Inside the crystal, Celine drifted closer to his hand, placing her palm against his, separated only by the impossible barrier. For a moment, the crystal seemed to warm, then "Find me, Nador. Find the way to bring me home." Whispers across time dawn broke over the crimson mountains of Proxima Vi as Nador hunched over his workstation, eyes red-rimmed from lack of sleep. For weeks he had tested every conceivable method to breach Selena's prison molecular disruptors. Quantum tunneling. Even ancient Meridian mystical techniques, long abandoned by his scientifically minded race. Nothing worked. But each failure brought them closer in other ways. "Tell me about Earth again," he requested during their evening session, recording her memories for his research. Celine's voice flowed into his mind. "We had oceans that stretched beyond the horizon. Forests where light filtered through leaves like stained glass. I had a small dwelling by a lake where I would watch birds skim across the water at sunset. Wish I could see it," Nador said, imagining a world so different from the sterile efficiency of Meridian architecture. "Perhaps you will." Her mental voice carried a warmth that made his 3 hearts beat in unfamiliar synchrony. Their conversation stretched beyond research. She spoke of human music, art, and literature. He described the cosmic nebulae he'd visited and the ancient civilizations whose artifacts he'd uncovered. Something unspoken grew between them, transcending species and time. On the 40th day, their peaceful research was shattered. Director Gemma burst into the lab, her usually composed features tight with alarm. "The Zenith Collective has learned of our discovery," she announced. "Their flagship has entered the system." Nador felt cold dread. The Zenith were the Meridian Empire's greatest rivals, known for their ruthless acquisition of powerful artifacts. "They can't have her," he said, surprising himself with his vehemence. "They won't," Gemma agreed. "Prepare for emergency relocation." That night, as Meridian scientists packed essential equipment, Nador stood before Seleni's prison. "We're taking you somewhere safer," he explained, "but the journey might be difficult." "I've survived 3,000 years," she replied. "I can manage a little turbulence." Her attempt at humor touched him deeply. "Selene," he hesitated, uncertain of the strange emotions she evoked. "I will never abandon you." Her expression softened. "I know, Nador, in all these centuries. You're the first to see me as more than a specimen." The research vessel departed under cover of darkness. The crystalline prison secured in its hold. Nador stayed beside it during the jump to hyperspace, monitoring its stability. When the ship shuddered violently, he threw himself protectively over the prison, though it was indestructible compared to his fragile form. "Zenith pursuers," the captain's voice announced over the comm, "preparing evasive maneuvers." "Where are we going?" Selene asked, as the ship lurched again. Nador's gaze met hers through the crystalline barrier. "Somewhere they won't expect. Somewhere that might hold answers we've overlooked." "Where?" "Earth," he replied. "Your home. It's been abandoned for millennia, but its ruins remain. If your prison was created there, perhaps the key to opening it remains there as well." As the ship hurtled through hyperspace, Nador placed his palm against her prison once more. This time, Selena's fingers aligned perfectly with his, and though he knew it was scientifically impossible, he could almost feel her warmth through the impenetrable barrier. "Take me home, Nador," she whispered in his mind, "and perhaps we'll both find what we've been searching for." Earth's desolate landscape stretched before them as Nador guided the small escape pod down through clouds the color of bruises. The main research vessel had continued on as a decoy, while he and two trusted assistants, Trin and Pellin, had taken Selena's prison to the abandoned cradle of humanity. "Radiation levels are within acceptable parameters," Trin reported, her tentacled fingers dancing across the controls. "But atmospheric toxicity requires filtration masks."
Ouch.
Nador nodded, his gaze fixed on the ruins below. 3,000 years had reduced humanity's greatest cities to skeletal remnants. Yet something hauntingly beautiful remained in their decay. "It's so different." Selena's voice in his mind was tinged with sorrow. "Yet I recognize the mountains. We're near what was once called Denver." They landed in a valley sheltered by the ancient Rockies, establishing a makeshift laboratory in the remains of a concrete structure. They carefully positioned Selena's prison at its center, while Trin and Pellin set up equipment. Nador explored nearby ruins. In what might have been a library or archive, he discovered fragile papers and corrupted digital storage devices. Working through the night with translation algorithms, he began to piece together fragments of information. "Selene," he said, returning to her prison with excitement, "I found references to a research project that matches your memories, something called Project Chronos. You weren't just any scientist. You led humanity's most ambitious temporal research." "I remember flashes," she admitted. "An accident. Energy beyond our control. I tried to contain it." "The prison isn't alien technology," Nador theorized, displaying his findings on a holographic projector. "It's human. You created it yourself as a containment field, and somehow became trapped inside." Their conversation was interrupted by Pellin's urgent return. "Zenith scouts," the young scientist reported breathlessly. 3 ships entered orbit. They're scanning for energy signatures." Nador made a quick decision. "Power down all non-essential systems. We'll use the planet's background radiation as camouflage." That night, in the darkness of the powerless lab, illuminated only by the soft glow of Selena's prison, Nador sat close to her. Continuing their conversation in whispers, though they communicated mentally, "If you created it," he reasoned, "you must have designed a way to open it." "I would have," she agreed. but it would be something secure, something only I could access. Something human, Nador realized suddenly. Not technological, but biological, perhaps? Your DNA? Fingerprints? Possibly. But I also would have wanted a manual override, something simple that couldn't fail even if technology did. Their eyes met through the crystalline barrier, and Nador felt that now familiar ache in his chest. The way her amber eyes caught the light of her prison, the curve of her lips when she shared a memory, these details had become precious to him. "Celine, when we free you, ... he began hesitantly. "Yes? I don't know what will happen. If you'll even exist outside this stasis field after so long. But I want you to know that what I feel for you transcends research or duty." Her expression softened, and he could almost imagine her hand touching his face. "And I never expected to find connection again, certainly not with someone born millennia after my time. Yet here we are, in the quiet darkness of a dead world, surrounded by the ghosts of her civilization and hunted by forces that would use her for power. They shared a moment of perfect understanding that needed no words, telepathic or otherwise. "Tomorrow," she said finally, "we should search for museums or military installations. If I built in a manual override, it would use something universally accessible to humans of my time." Nador nodded, his resolve strengthening. "Tomorrow, we continue the search, and we will find your key." Key of the ancestors' morning revealed a landscape transformed by overnight rainfall, the first natural precipitation Nador had ever witnessed. Water droplets clung to crumbling concrete and rusted metal, refracting sunlight into countless miniature rainbows. He found it mesmerizingly beautiful, this planet that had birthed Celine. "Zenith forces have deployed ground units," Trin reported, monitoring their perimeter sensors. "They're methodically searching ruins within a 50-kilometer radius." "Then we move quickly," Nador decided. "Pelin, stay with Selena's prison. Trin and I will search the structure I identified yesterday. It appears to have been a historical preservation facility." The building in question stood relatively intact compared to its surroundings, its stone facade having weathered the centuries better than most. Inside, glass cases lay shattered, their contents long since decayed or looted. Yet in a lower level, sealed by a collapsed stairwell that they carefully cleared, they discovered a preservation vault. "Primitive, but effective oxygen displacement system," Trin noted, examining the sealed room. "Combined with the underground temperature stability, some artifacts might remain intact." They worked methodically through display cases containing human historical items, clothing, documents, and tools spanning various periods. In a section labeled Warfare Evolution, Nador found what made his heart stutter with recognition. A simple metal blade, partly rusted but still recognizable as a weapon. The informational tablet beside it had failed millennia ago. But Nador carefully extracted the knife and secured it in his specimen case. "This matches descriptions in the fragments I translated," he explained to Trin. "Common tool carried by scientists in Selenis. Facilitate both utilitarian and defensive." They returned as dusk approached, narrowly avoiding a Zenith patrol. Back at their hideout, Nador presented his finding to Celine. A standard-issue survival knife. She confirmed, her mental voice tinged with excitement. "Every researcher carried one. Mine had my identification encoded in the handle. Would you have used this as a key?" Nador asked, examining the simple blade. "Something so primitive?" "Precisely because it was primitive," she replied. "If catastrophic system failure occurred, electronic or biometric keys might fail. But this would always work." That night, as Pelin and Trin rested, Nador sat alone with Celine, the knife resting on his lap. The moonlight streaming through the broken ceiling cast strange shadows across her crystalline prison. "I've been thinking about what happens after," he admitted softly. "About us." "So have I," she confessed. "I may not belong in this time, and you belong to the stars, to your research." "I belong wherever my hearts lead me," Nador said, surprising himself with the emotion in his voice. "For 3,000 years, you were alone. I don't want you to be alone again." Her expression was tender, vulnerable. "And I don't want to lose you. now that I've found someone who understands me across time and species. In that moment, with danger closing in around them and the uncertain prospect of her freedom before them, something unspoken passed between them, promise, a hope, a future neither had imagined possible. Tomorrow, Nador said, we try the knife, and whatever happens after, we face it together, she agreed. Her mental voice a caress that made him close his eyes to better feel its warmth. Outside their shelter, lightning flashed across the sky, illuminating the ruined city in brief. Electric moments, a fitting metaphor, Nador thought, for how Selene had illuminated his methodical, logical existence with something he had never expected to find: love. Dawn had barely broken when Pellin's urgent whisper woke Nador. Multiple zenith signatures converging on our position. Heavy units, at least 20 soldiers. Nador moved quickly to Selena's prison. We're out of time. Do it now, she urged. The knife, try it before they arrive. With trembling hands, Nador examined the ancient blade. The handle contained a depression that might once have held an identification chip. The edge, despite its age, retained a certain sharpness beneath the rust. What if this doesn't work? He asked. What if it harms you? After 3,000 years, I'm willing to risk everything for freedom, she answered. For a chance at a real life with you. Her words steadied him. Carefully, he pressed the blade against the crystal surface, searching for any indication of a locking mechanism or keyhole. The prison remained unchanged, its blue luminescence pulsing steadily. Outside, the sounds of zenith forces grew closer. They've surrounded the perimeter, Trin reported, weapon drawn. We have minutes at most. Desperation mounting, Nador tried different positions, different angles with the knife. Nothing happened. The edge, Selene suggested suddenly. Not as a key, but as a tool. My prison responds to human elements. It was designed to protect humanity's timeline. Understanding dawned. Nador pressed his finger against the blade's edge, wincing as it broke his gray skin. A drop of his blue blood welled up, falling onto the knife's surface. Not my blood, he realized. Human blood. That's the element missing from all previous attempts. The first explosion rocked their shelter as the zenith forces began their assault. Debris rained down, narrowly missing Selene's prison. In a final, desperate attempt, Nador scraped the blade against the weathered stone floor, removing centuries of rust to expose raw metal beneath. Then, with practiced precision, he touched it to a specific point on the prison where the light seemed to pulse most strongly. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then a hairline fracture appeared in the crystal surface, spreading outward in an intricate pattern. Light leaked through the growing fissures, blindingly bright. It's working. Nador shouted above the chaos of the assault. The prison shattered in a cascade of crystalline fragments, dissipating into motes of light before they hit the ground. And there, suddenly corporeal and real, stood Selene, her amber eyes wide. Her dark hair settling around her shoulders as gravity claimed it for the first time in millennia. She gasped, drawing her first breath as Nador caught her collapsing form. Got you, he whispered, his heart's racing at the feel of her warm and solid in his arms. The wall behind them exploded inward. Zenith soldiers poured through the breach, weapons raised. Surrender the temporal anomaly, her commander ordered. Selene straightened in Nador's arms, her legs finding strength. Her eyes met his, a lifetime of connection passing between them in an instant. Run, he urged her. Instead, she reached for his hand, interlacing her 5 fingers with his 4. Together, remember? Before Nador could respond, Selene reached for the ancient knife he still clutched and pressed it to her palm, drawing a thin line of red human blood. The droplets that fell to the ground began to glow with the same blue luminescence as her former prison. I contained it once, she said, her voice hoarse from disuse but strong with determination. I can redirect it. Energy crackled around them as the zenith forces advanced cautiously. Selene closed her eyes, concentrating. The blue glow expanded outward from her blood, creating a shimmering field around them. What's happening? Nador asked, holding her steady. She smiled at him, radiant with newfound freedom and power reclaimed. A doorway. My research was never about imprisonment. It was about travel, about possibilities. The energy field solidified into a portal, showing glimpses of stars and distant worlds. We can go anywhere, she told him, her free hand caressing his face. Anytime, any place where we can be together. As the Zenith forces opened fire, their energy weapons dissipating harmlessly against Selena's field, Nador made the easiest decision of his life. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching in an intimate gesture that spanned species and millennia. Lead the way, he said. I follow you across time itself, hand in hand. They stepped through the portal, leaving behind prison and pursuers alike, free at last to write their own story across the stars.